Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final Ask the Expert of 2024. We've got a little bit of a different Ask the Expert on this occasion, so we're going to look at a number of topics, some of which you may not know that you can do in Prism, and some of which you may already be using. So we're going to look at widget, templates, alerts, dashboards, device utilization, and a little foray into Microsoft licensing as well, which is included if you're a Teams customer. So yeah, I'm Richard, I'm the Head of Service Management here at Tiger, and with me today is...
Myself, Matt. Welcome everybody. I am the Technical Product Lead here at Tiger.
And as I've said in the chat, if you've got any questions as we're going through any of the topics or any general questions about Prism, please do get them into the chat. I'll be monitoring as we go through and we'll do our absolute best to get them included for you. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it. Matt, the first topic we're going to discuss today is going to be widget templates. So we want to have a look at the questions come in, looking at repeatable analytics queries with our pre-built widgets. So I guess there's two things. Let's talk about our widget library a little bit, shall we?
Yeah.
And then perhaps give a quick demo of kind of how to import and how you can use a widget, please.
Sure. So over the past year, Tiger has created a set of Prism widgets that you guys can import into Tiger Prism. So these are things that we've gone away, we've spoken with customers and things that, you know, that they would use on a regular basis. So we've created the widgets for you guys so that you don't have to create them yourself. They give you an idea, they give you a template of where to start with. We know that with analytics can be quite complicated sometimes, and finding the right columns is sometimes a little bit more difficult because there is such a vast amount of information that's available. So within our Tiger.io Get Started website, up here, this is the URL if you need it. We've created these Tiger Prism widgets for you. Now, depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for telephony-based widgets, you would enter at this point here. If you're looking at the Microsoft Teams widgets, you will be clicking over here. So if I start with a telephony widget and click over here, let's go and look at, say, an out-of-hours specific calls on dial digits. So what I want to be able to do is take this widget and bring it into my Tiger Prism system. So you simply click on the view widget over here. This will then give you a definition of what the widget does and the output columns that are going to become available. And what it also does is explains what modifications you can make. Okay, so this just explains why we put filters on here and what the filters do and how you can change these filters to make it more relevant to the searches you're using. Okay, so when we come in here, you've got here, for example, the transfer digits, etc. in here. Now, I like this widget. I want to bring it into my Tiger Prism system. How do I do it? So under your widget text here, there's a copy to clipboard button. What you do is you click this button here and it copies the text to your clipboard. What you'll then need to do is come into your Tiger Prism system and come into your telephony section. Now, if you've copied a Microsoft Teams one, you'd have to go into the Microsoft Teams section. Otherwise, you'd go into the telephony section here. You go into your analytics window here. And in the bottom left-hand corner will be this import widget section. Once you're in here, it will then pop up a square like this, where you can input text. So to do this, there's multiple ways to get the data in here, but you just simply right click and then click the paste option here, and that will input your text. Or you can just click in there and push Control-V to paste in your data also. Once you've pasted your data in here and click confirm, what you'll see will then happen is it will draw that widget that we've created for you onto screen here. Now, if you keep the template up open on another tab, you can come back and read what the columns are, so you can reference what those columns mean, why you would make modifications. So let's start with, say, hours and weekdays here. Why would I want to maybe change these? Well, at the moment it's set between out of not between 8 and 6 o'clock. Well, let's say that the business opens 9 till 5. So I may want to adjust that slightly to go, actually, well, we open 9 until 5. Okay, so I can say I don't want any calls that are between 9 and 5 because they're my business hours. Once you've made those changes, you then simply select your dates and you can go off and you can generate that data here, and it will give you all calls made on out of hours, so anything that's not between 9 and 5, and in this case, and it's a weekend, so you know people are making calls out of hours.
Yeah, and I think this is a good report. It's also a good report from a well-being, employee well-being point of view, because you within your organisation don't want people working 24 hours a day, and this is a really good widget to kind of make sure that people are taking that downtime and that break from work. I think to Matt's point, sometimes the creation of these, in essence, analytics queries, these widgets can be quite daunting. We make sure that we try and add 2 widgets at least every month to this library. So if you have any suggestions, anything you'd like to see, then you can email hello@tiger.io, or you can contact myself, Matt, raise a request with the service team. We will look to create the widgets for you. So yeah, if you've got any confusion, complications with it, let us know. We'll happily do the work for you.
So that's just one example of the many that are available here. So if we look at, say, the individual high cost calls, again, as I said, they're all built in the same way. They all explain what they're going to do. They all explain the outputs. And again, you just copy your widget from here. You come back into here, you import your widget, you click into your box, you paste your data in and click confirm. Then you just simply need to make your modifications here. Once you're happy, then you can save your widget at the top here, and then you can save it either for you, or you can save it and make it available to any of your colleagues, to specific widget groups within your system. As I said though, if you are running Teams ones, over here, if you go into your Teams ones, you must make sure you go into your Teams analytics. So if I take, say, for example, calls that go through auto attendance, okay? So if I go and look at this widget, and I copy this one here, if I accidentally try and import that into the telephony section, it will tell me that it's invalid and I've imported it to the wrong one. Okay, so if you do get this warning message, it's simply because you've gone into the wrong screen, and you'll just have to navigate to the correct screen. So let me navigate through to the right one, paste that in here, and let's do it for last month. And here what this is doing then is telling us how many calls have gone through our auto attendant, and then which hours. So what we're doing here is looking at which is our busiest hour for our auto attendant, and how long were people waiting in that auto attendant as well while we're pushing options and so on. So it gives just a very high level bit of information. So if we're seeing lots of calls like, why are people trying to ring our main number at between 11 and midnight, we've had 2 of those, and they probably got the auto out of office message and hung up at that point.
Very good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Matt. And yeah, look, do use that library. Do request more. We really do like creating these and sharing these. It makes your life a lot easier. So yeah, please do let us know. So a quick question actually come in. Good timing. Can we automate these widgets to run reports regularly?
100%, yes. So once you've created your widget, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can then save the widget at the top here, as I said before, or you can schedule the widget. So what you do is you create what's called a widget job. So from this, let's say I want to, at the end of every day, I want this widget emailed to me. What you do is you simply click on the widget job here.
Or 8 o'clock in the morning in your inbox, whenever you want.
Yeah, whenever you want it from there. And then you simply just follow the wizard. So it takes in from your previous screen your widget. You then need to give it a name, a test, for example, here. You then schedule this to run. So when you come, the difference between the schedule and the target data, I will explain this. When you schedule something, it says how often do you want this job to run. So this is the job, not the data that's contained in it. So I can say I want it to run forever, run once. Let's say I've put up a temporary auto attendant for the Christmas period. I want to know how many times people are ringing that one, but I know it's only going to be up for 3 weeks. So I could do 21 days, for example, here, or run till the 31st of January, 31st of December. When I want it to next run, so I can say if we want it at 8 o'clock in the morning, then let's schedule it to run at 8 a.m. And I want it every day. And what it will do then is there's a graphical interface at the bottom here that then indicates when these are going to be delivered to you here. What you then do is you then move on to your target data. So this is when it's going to run, and then this tells it how much data you want it to contain. So if we're running it every day, it can send you the last month's worth of data every day. It could send you the last week's worth of data every day. And you can see here, when that job runs on the 27th, it's going to send us the last week's worth of data. But because we're doing it daily, what we were actually looking for here is when it runs at 8 a.m. in the morning, I want it to send me yesterday's data, okay? Just as a note, if you want the current days, you'd have to set it to there. So you'll see when it runs at 8 in the morning, it will only look between midnight and 8 a.m., okay? Then what you simply do is tell it where you want it to go, so which email address, etc., and just finish the wizard through here.
Yeah, and the advantage with this obviously is if you're an administrator for Prism and somebody asks you, well, can I have this every day? This is what you can do for them. You can set it up, deliver it to their inbox, done. You know, they'll be very, very happy and your life will be a lot easier. So yeah, it is a really good feature to use that scheduling.
Yeah, and just on the point of bringing in widget definitions, if you have got a widget set up and you can't remember exactly how it looked, you can come into your widget jobs. You can look for that widget job. You can edit this, and again, you can export that bit of code like what we have on our website. We can copy this from here, like what we did on our website. Unfortunately, there's not a button like on our website, so you have to right click and copy. But then you can take that widget again, and you can come back into your analytics.
Back to import. Back
to your import, bring it in here, confirm, and then you can have that again. And maybe you can make your adjustments in here and reschedule, or you can make your adjustments in here and then import it back into your job as well. Okay.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so we're going to go on and talk about alerts next, actually. And this crosses over nicely from widgets because things like alerts, obviously, you know, for example, you might want to know how many 999 calls are being placed in your organisation. And you could create an alert. So every morning you get a report saying, here's all the 999 calls that were placed. It's similar to widgets, but of course, alerts, we see a lot of customers run more frequently, right, Matt? Because Correct. They don't want to wait a whole day.
No.
So, no, I mean, as a Tiger user, what alerts would be beneficial to set up?
Well, if we start there at that point about explaining what the difference between a scheduled widget is here and an alert job, it will help you understand why they are different. So with a widget job will run irregardless. So like what we did, we just scheduled a widget. It would run every day. But if there were no calls that went to that auto attendant, you would get a blank email every day for that. The difference between that and alert is alert, if there is no data returned, it won't send an email. Okay, so you won't get the blank email like you would do if you scheduled a widget job. So the point of this is that you want to be alerted when something happens. Okay, so what you do is you set a set of criteria, and when those criteria are met, it will then send an email. It may FTP a set of data somewhere, to inform you that that has happened. Okay, so that's the difference between a widget job and an alert job. Is the widget job will send data irregardless. An alert job will only send when there is data available. So what are useful ones, as Richard said, that you as a business could look at? So I'm going to kind of start with maybe the from a technical perspective. So what I want to be doing is being alerted when there are certain things within the system. There are things called call termination cause values, and let's do SIP termination cause values. And what these are the non-technical people that may not know about these. These are a set of codes that tell us that there's been a problem with a phone call. Okay, so what we can say is in here is greater than 0 and it is greater than 0, because what we don't want is the 0 one. So 0 means the call was normal. Okay, at that point. So if it's a 0, the call was normal at that point, and we don't really want to know that anything's happened at that point.
I feel you may want to save this. This could be our next widget, man. Or our next alert.
Let me actually choose this month, because there's data there now. So what you end up over here is these call termination cause values. So for Cisco users, 16 is actually normal from here, but you may get some of these unusual call codes here that you see. So this here we're looking at is Cisco data. So they have call termination cause values that tell us what happened on that call. Now I happen to know that 393216 means the call was split off the top of my head, and 16 is normal. But what we could be doing is looking at these codes as a high level to understand what's going on. And I want to be alerted when there's things like 404 errors where the call failed to connect, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a lot of these columns because I don't really care too much about all of these things here. All I'm interested in is these two fields here. And what I want to be doing is I want to be getting an alert when there's been more than X amount of these things happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count these legs here, and I'm going to run this again. And what this will do then, let's do it for this month, for example. It will then summarize all this data up. So I've had some 17s, which is an error, and a 47, which is also an error. So I want to be alerted when that happens, when I've had, let's say, more than 10 17s in a day, because there's obviously then a problem on our network, and we need to inform somebody that's happened. Okay, so what we can then do is say down here is we use this thing called the group filter. Okay, so the group filter filters our subset of results here. Okay, so what I can say is I'm only interested when the total, so the total sum is greater than 10, for example. So this will then return at the bottom. It will filter out this row here and just leave me the rows that are greater than 10. So what I now need to do is schedule this as an alert, because that's what I want to be alerted on. If there's more than 10 calls made to those or that have those outcomes, I want to be alerted on that.
And that takes us nicely to that you want to tell someone.
Yes.
And this is obviously where you can now choose, because you might not be the telephony administrator, you might be the Prism administrator.
Correct.
This is now where you can choose who receives the alert.
Yeah, so when we come and look at some of the others, like calls with excessive costs, 999 calls is used as an example. There's no point me being, as say, the telephony administrator. Why would I want to know that someone's made a 999 call? But my security officer that sat down at the front and has just had 10 ambulances, 10 fire engines, 10 police cars just knock on his door, he's going, well, I don't know who made the 999 call, but at least if he's got an email in his inbox to go, right, this extension number has made it, and we can add in things like the department, if you've got any custom fields that may help them understand where to go.
And look, I think it's worth adding, you could run that alert, say, for 999 for every 5 minutes.
Yeah, correct, you can.
And then that way, you know, look, we are live-like. It's not quite real time. We have to receive the call, process it, etc., into the system. But within 5 minutes, we generally would have the call processed.
Yeah.
You know, set it to 5 minutes, and then that way, your security officer at that front desk, he knows who's placed the call.
Yeah. So once we've created our widget, this is what we're happy with. We then click on the alert job from a widget definition, the same as we did for the other one, and it brings up a wizard for us. Now, there is two separate things, or the separate settings that are different to our previous screen. So again, we need to fill in the detail. Again, we need to set our schedule for how often we want it to run. So I'm just going to call this test for now. So I want this to run, let's say, run forever. I want it to run every hour to go and check how many, you know, of these error codes I've got. So every hour, go and check the error codes that we've had. Now, when you get to the target data, this is the key part of what an alert, or what differentiates an alert. So you've got two options. You've got the alert on new data, or you've got check this period of time. So an alert on new data will look at the last set of calls it checked. So as it goes through, every call gets an ID. So let's say we've got ID 1 to 10. So we've checked calls 1 to 10 to see if it meets our criteria. If it does, it will send an alert. If it doesn't, it will move on. So the next time it checks, it will check call ID 11 to say 20, let's say.
Think of it putting a bookmark in.
Yeah, a bookmark in each time. So it's only checking new calls that have arrived going forward. Or you can get it to check a period of time every hour. So what you can say is, I want it to go and check the last hour. So at 10:22, it will go and check between 9 and 10, how many of those errors did we get? If a line appears in analytics, it will then send an email to you. Sorry, I say an email. It will send a success notification, whether this be an email, it will FTP somewhere, or drop a file off somewhere else.
I mean, look, generally people will use the email option, right?
Yeah, most people will use the email option.
It's much more visible, isn't it, than having to go and check a file location somewhere.
Yeah, and if you don't know the person's email, something not a lot of people know, if you click on the to button, what you can do is bring up your internal Prism subscriber list here, which does also then contain people's email addresses.
This stems back to where we were talking about directories in our last ask.
Yeah. So having that makes it easier for you to go and find their email address. Now, we can also in your back in our schedule, you may not want it to run out of hours. So I don't want my emails out of hours for this as well. I'm not really that bothered. I'm not going to action it. So you can also say, right, I'm only interested as well between set hours. So I can say, but only check between these hours, because outside of that, I'm not working. I'm not going to action it anyway, or wait and see what happens. You may, though, leave it running 24 hours. You may not check your emails overnight, etc. So just to let you know, you can also limit the check-in.
But of course, that security type example function, actually, that mailbox may be monitored all the time.
Correct.
And of course, you want it to run.
Yeah. So you set your success notification and then follow the wizard through to the end here. Okay. So if I step back then, and let's have a look at maybe some other things you would do. So
should we look at the Teams one, as we've done telephony here? What about user feedback? So I know this is a function we try and encourage within Tiger when you get the option to leave feedback.
Yeah. So what you end up for Teams users, anybody that's used Teams, anybody that's used any application, at the end of a call, what you get is a option to give feedback of how that call went. Okay, so you'll get things like, I'll use Teams again as an example. You get 5 stars, and you can choose how you rate that call. And it also gives you the opportunity to type feedback in about what happened. So what I'm, as an administrator of Teams, what I want to know is, if anybody's got rating a call as 1 star or putting some text in here, I want to know about who did it and why. So what I can do is I can put my feedback rating label. feedback rating name, feedback rating text, and I'll put in the token set name as well, but it's not really that important. But the most important one here is the feedback rating label. So what I'm interested in, I want to know when somebody's rated a call as poor or bad. Okay,
that's a 1 or a 2 star.
1 or a 2 star. Okay, because what I want to be doing as an administrator is being alerted someone's gone, well, that call was crap. I don't know why it was so bad. How do I improve my service to the end users? So what I can do is, if I choose, say, this month, I think we actually have it. Let's do it for this year. Obviously, our service is working so well, some of our users aren't. But anyway, so I can see here, Steve's rated a call as bad, and Sally's rated a call as bad. So what I want to be doing is alerting myself or alerting somebody that that's happened. So,
and again, you could put this filter in here to say, I only want to know if it's more than 10 times.
You can, yes. So you could summarize the data up and say,
we all have that one odd bad call.
Yeah, we do.
And you know, maybe we don't want to alert on that. Maybe we want to know if there's a persistent pattern of somebody rating they've got bad calls.
Yeah, because it could be someone's just clicking the star because they're just ending the call and going, oh, not that again, and clicking the star.
Yeah.
So here I can see Steve's put that the audio dropped over here. So again, it would be good at that point being alerted straight away, so it's fresh in Steve's mind about what happened on that call to go back and talk to him about this. So I want an alert on these feedback ratings, and again, now I've got this here, I click on my alert job, click on confirm, and then follow my wizard through with that data. And again,
this could be a daily rather than, you know, I mean, I know what you're saying about it kind of wanting to be prompt.
Yeah.
But you could find yourself inundated with and I think this is, as a note, this is where you've got to be careful with alerts. If you set it to every 5 minutes and you kind of set your threshold too high or too low, depending on what you're alerting on, you could end up with an email every 5 minutes.
You certainly could. So in here, we'll say, let's say every half an hour, an alert on new data, because I don't want to know that it's happened again and again and again. I just want it once to be told.
And actually, I think new data is quite important when you're talking about Teams, because obviously Microsoft is a cloud service provider. Whilst we do generally get the events very quickly, sometimes there can be a delay. So I think the new data is more important, particularly with that cloud type technology.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So alerts, I said, keep it in mind that the schedule widgets will return blank data. Alerts will only return when data results are set back.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay, look, that's the analytics section that we wanted to do today, and it just shows you how much more you can get out of analytics with alerts and scheduling, with widgets specifically. So let's talk about dashboards a little bit, if we may, please. So we'll do this as a quicker one. What we want to do here is a bit of a kind of end of year. We've introduced some new dashboards for Teams. Do you want to go in and show us the dashboards in our latest release, please, Matt?
Yep. So let me start with the new dashboards that were added. So the team specific ones, we've added under our call insights here. We've updated our call queues dashboard to include some new additional information. But the key part here that we've updated on our dashboard is for users that use it at the moment, this left-hand pane here used to be that it was fixed and you couldn't do anything with it. So what we've now done is we've made these as columns that you can now turn on and turn off, and you can also sort on these columns as well. So this makes your life easier. If I'm looking, I want to see my top agents now that are answering calls in my call queues. I can now sort on total calls, and I can see which agents are then picking up the most amount of calls. So when I walk past them in the call center, I can, pat them on the back and go, you're doing great today. So that's now been added in here.
I mean, look, the first thing that jumps out to me looking at dashboards, great for management reports, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Quick print screen, take a snapshot of what you want, chuck it in your PowerPoint that's got to go up to your board, etc. Done, right? The work's done for you.
Yep. So the other one that we added was this new call queue summary. So if you're in charge of or a manager of multiple call queues, what you don't want to be doing is in your call queues here is you have to select a different call queue. So you have to go, okay, so I'm checking that one. Let's go now check my sales call queue. Come in here, right? Okay, and it gets a little bit laborious of selecting through each one. So the call queue summary is here to allow you to select all of the call queues that you're in charge of from your list. So or it may be that you're locked down, so you can only see certain call queues. So you'd only be able to select the ones that you have rights to see. Once you've selected all of yours, it then displays them on the screen here. If they don't quite full fit, there is this little grey bar here that you can adjust and move them so that you can get them all to fit on the screen here. So you can adjust and move it. And here then I can then see very quickly which is my busiest queues. You know, if I'm seeing lots of unanswered calls in these queues, what's happening? Why is it happening? I can go and speak to them. And again, I can then change my dates to maybe say auto refresh, leave this running on a tab on another screen and just, you know, quickly come back in and go, okay, yeah, that's all good today. And then carry on with my daily work. So that's what this call queue summary is all about. Now there is a corresponding one that goes with this for telephony. So if you have got hunt groups set up in your dashboards, under your incoming, you have the hunt group summary, which is the same again. So again, you can monitor your hunt groups. It's not specific for teams. If you have got hunt groups, you can come in here as well and look at your hunt groups in this summary page from there as well.
And obviously we're looking at this year here at the moment.
Yeah.
You can change it.
Yeah, you can change it again today. Yeah. Yeah, in here. So one of the other key things this year that obviously the questions and so on that I've had throughout the year is one of them is I've got this customer in my telephony, I've got my customer first point of answer and I've got my incoming performance. Well, what's the difference between the two? So I get this asked quite a lot. So I feel this is a good place to try and explain what it is. So the customer first point of answer is the first interaction with a human at your business. Okay, so what it does is where you may have a call that comes into an IVR, then is transferred to maybe another IVR, then transferred off somewhere else into a hunt group, and then is answered by someone. So that's 4 legs of a call that we see in Tiger. What we want to be doing though is eliminating the first 3 because no one's had an opportunity to answer the calls at that point. So if I looked at my incoming performance, I would see all 4 legs of those calls. You'll see these numbers are much higher. It's the same date period this month to it is here to this month.
So in essence, you're getting people abandoned while they're going through the options still.
Correct. Yeah. So you're not having the opportunity to answer. So why are we included in here? So where the first point answer is, it's
presented to someone is the word.
Correct. Yeah. So we're looking at the difference between presented and not presented. So in here you can come and look at the difference between the two. So I've been asked that quite a lot this year. And the other great thing about this one is that you may also only be interested when it comes through a particular phone line. Okay, so for example, our 8203 line, and I can now look at that at my first point of answer going to my group here. So if I'm only interested in here and I can see, you know, team's doing great. They've answered all the calls that have been presented to them. So, you know, there's not much more I can ask about from that perspective.
Yeah. And look, there are a number of other dashboards available as well.
Correct.
It's worth having a little click through.
Yeah.
You know, we do produce new dashboards, as we've said, with teams and the hungry ones. We've put some new dashboards in this year. If you've got any requirements, I can't guarantee we'll definitely do them, but we're always interested in improving our offering here. So again, get in touch with us and we'll look to see if it's something we can build for you and implement into Prism.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other key things here is looking at, you know, who are your top users of maybe Teams, for example, because They're going to be your adopters that are using the system. They're the people as a business you want to be going talking to about how you improve the processes, improve service to them, etc. So even just using your top X dashboard, go and pick your top 4 people, go and have a word with them. What do they like about the way the phones are working? What can we help them with? Where do we go and, you know, improve our service? And at least if you've got a sort of a steering pool that you can use by looking at the people that are using it the most, it really does help you.
I might have to go and check the dummy data in, Matt, just to see if you've been up to no good. Right, that's brilliant. Thank you. So let's go on from dashboards. Let's talk a little bit about device utilization. So I think, you know, one of the examples I always think of, let's say as a company, you go out and spend £20,000 on new headsets for staff.
Yep.
Because you've got customers going, I can't really hear your staff, the quality's not very good. You know, we talked about quality a little bit, but let's now talk about equipment.
Yeah.
So how could I then say, go and check that these 200 headsets or 2,000 headsets, whatever I've bought that I've sent out to people, are actually being used?
Yeah. So there are one set of restrictions on this. So unfortunately, it only lends itself to people that run a Cisco call manager that can do this, get this information out, or if you're running Microsoft Teams. Okay, so they are slightly different, but both give, you know, a huge amount of information and really help you drive that understanding. You know, return on investment is quite important from this perspective. So with your devices, there is a device menu here. And what this does is it then lists out all of your devices that are on your, that have been seen by Tiger Prism. Okay. Now, what you can do from here is using your device categories. We can set what type of categories there are. So whether they're iPad clients, iPhone clients, desk phones, etc. And we then use what's known as device types to then work out what they are. So with Cisco, for example, if it starts with TCT, it's an iPhone client. If it starts with Tab, it's an iPad client. So we can categorize the devices this way as well. So we can use the first set of digits to categorize what they are.
And we very handily added that field in the report here.
Yeah. And what you can also do is go and look at, say, what models they are. So you can go and specifically say, right, this device is an 8885, and you can put like a picture against it, or it's one of these headsets. And you can also put manufacturers in here. So once you've got your devices, you come into here, you look for your devices. So Cisco users will see here that you recognize these. You can update them by coming in here and changing the model, the device type. You can even put things like serial numbers and asset tags in here if you want to centralize all that within Tiger. So what's the benefit of having all this information? Well, what you can do is there are 2 ways to get this information. Now, the best way I feel to do it is through a dashboard. And under your UC adoption, what you have is your device type adoption. Now, what the device type adoption does is it goes and looks at those categorizations of your phones that you set up earlier, and it says, so I'm just going to change this down to one panel for a second so it makes it a bit easier. It says in this period for 1 month, we've had 219 calls on desk phones, 30 calls on UCCX phones, and 139 calls on our Unity voicemail. And it then tells us how many unique devices we used in that point. So our return on investment is if we bought 40 phones, in the month of April, only 23 of those were ever used, which means that there was 17 sat dormant somewhere in our office that never got touched. So what I want to understand is over a 4-month period, so what I'm going to do is change this over to a 4-month period. What was our uptake and downtake over this time? So what this dashboard then does is goes and looks at our different panels and says, right, so in the month of April, we had 23 active. Compare that to month 2, we were actually down 32% against panel 3, we were down 32%. So there was obviously a bit of an uptake in May because it's gone up. Look, so compared to week 1, it went up 47%. Then compared to 3 and 4, there's not much of a change, although it is green, so it has gone up. Okay.
And this is obviously a really good way of looking at your return on investment.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we know hardware's expensive, whether it be a headset for a laptop, a new mobile phones that you want people to be using for work, etc. I mean,
yeah. And this is the important thing here is, you don't want lots of devices being sat dormant doing nothing.
Yeah. Now, how could we recover those devices? I guess is probably the question our listeners are thinking about now. So you've said we've got 17 that aren't being used.
So unfortunately, at the moment, there's no way of doing that through Prism. But what you can do is from analytics is you can come into your call legs and you can type in your device name. Okay, so you can use like call device name or calling device name. And what this will do is contain, what I'm just going to do is change our collecting CDR source because we only want to be looking at our PBX data for a second. And what it will do then is give you a list of all the devices this month. Yep, sorry. This will then give you the device names that we used. You can then export this out from Prism and then maybe do a VLOOKUP against your list of data that you've exported from your call manager and go, right, well, I've used that device has been used, this device has been used, and then it will leave you all the ones that haven't been used, and then you can go and look those up in your system, try and work out where they are physically in your office, because it could be someone walked off of it down the road and it's never to be seen again.
Yeah.
But you won't know that until you've done those cross checks.
Yeah.
So that's how we look at it from a Cisco point of view. I'll quickly cover how we can do it from a Microsoft point of view.
Yeah, so I mean, device adoption's a good one here. I talked about going out and spending £20,000 on headsets.
Yeah.
How can you see people are actually using them?
So under Microsoft Teams and in your Teams media, there are 2 fields that you can use. So you have device driver and device name. Now I'm going to turn both of those on because it's quite important that we see those. And if I look at this month, for example, what this does then tells you which camera was being used or which headset was being used during that call. So if I have cameras turned on, it will tell me my camera value and the driver that was being used. Or if it's a headset, it will tell me what headset was being used.
So I expect to see a lot of Jabra in here for us because it's largely Tiger data. I know it's anonymized to a degree, but I expect to see Jabra because that's our standard offering here.
That's the hope. We'll see lots of those. But for example, here at the top, I can already see this top call here. They were using the smart sound. So that means that they were using their laptop speaker, microphone, sorry, because it was under the main audio. That's what they were using to make the call. So it could be because if they were out in a cafeteria somewhere and it's really noisy, they could have said to you, I've experienced a really bad quality call. Well, that's because you were using your internal laptop mic and it was probably picking up all of the sound from everywhere, okay? So my advice to you would be go and use the device that we provided to you and you'll get a better call quality at that point, okay? Whereas I can see Ben picked up and used his Jabra and he probably experienced a much better, call quality from that point. Now, the other thing that we see here is the driver. So what if Jabra come to us and say, look, there's a bug in Teams on this release of software? What we can also do is come and look at all of our ones that are using these versions and go and work out who do we need to go and talk to go and update their software because they will experience problems. So we're being proactive by going to them and going, right, I want you to update your software because we know you're going to hit a problem.
So this is a great one for the IT hardware support team.
Yeah.
They get ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to look at all devices that we've used this month. And this will then give me, because I'm just looking at the driver and the device name and I'm just adding up here, it will tell me all of the devices that we're using. What this is going to do is highlight either that people are using devices that they shouldn't be using because it may be that we're not allowing these things in our company, or it's highlighting that people are using the hardware that we provide to them. Okay, so we can see in here all the cameras that are being used. On here we can see, look, we've got these Jabra Evolve 65s and 76 calls using those. We've got all the Jabra Evolves 20s, the Jabra Engages, etc. And as we come through, then I hit one and go, we've got a Plantronics one. Who's using a Plantronics one device in here? So what we can do then is, once we've got this information, is I could then open up a new tab, for example. I can then come into here and I can add in my filters, because what I want to know is who was making those calls, because now it's highlighted this to me. I need to know who was using it. And I can say, right, go and find me all my Plantronic Blackwire ones for this month again. And it will then tell me who is using it. And if I want to know which department they're on, it could be that, I add in their department levels, so I know which department they're in. So I'm going to talk to the manager and go, right, look, they've attached a device to their laptop, which, we don't support. Do you mind just having a quick word and trying to point them in the right
older device?
Yeah.
Again, to your point, teams may be saying we don't really support it. Yeah, I encountered this myself. I had an older Plantronics device that this year stopped working with Teams because it's several years old and the drivers didn't work, so I had to buy a new device. But we could have identified that in advance.
Yeah, so we're just being proactive. We're going, right, we understand that there are, upcoming things. We need to go and be proactive to try and prevent things happening in the future.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Matt. Okay, last topic for today that we want to discuss, and then we're going to give a little preview of our next Ask the Expert for January next year, Microsoft licensing. So this, I think, is a great example where a lot of people don't realise that if you're a Teams customer, this is kind of a free add-on, as it were, that we can offer our Teams customers within Prism.
Yeah, so within your Office 365, there is a set of pre-built reports that are available to you, one being our license insight. So what the Office 365 license utilization does is gives you feedback on what people are doing with their licensing. For transparency on this, the data is between 24 and 48 hours behind. So when you select your report, if you select today, it will come back blank. So just try and set it back to a period in the past that you know. There are the abilities to filter on a particular person's name, and you can also pick a set of departments as well. So if you're looking for licensing to save money in an area that's slightly bigger, so I'll pick, for example, pick our department here, service management, just to limit it down to only have a few people in here. So if I now generate that, what that's going to be able to do is I can provide this back to that manager to go, right, here's all your staff members that are in our department. This is their name. This is when they last used these particular Microsoft Office 365 applications. So I can see here, Ashley uses Exchange on the 22nd. He used his OneDrive on the 13th. He logged on to SharePoint on the 21st. He hasn't used Skype, which is correct because we don't have Skype. He has logged on to Yammer, but he's never actually used it again since. And he's been logged on to Teams on the 22nd. And here, this is how many PSTN calls he's made and received. Okay, so these are PSTN only.
And that's important because obviously there is a monthly charge to have the ability to make PSTN calls.
Make and receive calls.
And it's an add-on.
It is an add-on, certainly it is. And it then tells you as well the assigned products. So what products has he got assigned to him? So I can then pass this over to then the manager. In this case, I'll pass it over to Richard, and Richard can then review this and go, right, well, all these people here are making and receiving calls. Therefore, they've got a valid license assigned to them. They're using these bits here. Great. So the licenses are correct, and I can see which ones are assigned to the correct people. Once you've got this, it may be you need to do some work in it. So let's take it out. Let's put it into Excel. Let's download it. Let's put it into a process that I can then open it up and go and look for this data. Come and make amendments to it. Do whatever I need to with it, because I've now got it in Excel. I can make my changes as and when I need to.
So look, it's just a handy little add-on.
Yep.
That allows us to see what people are using.
Yep.
And look, there is potential savings. Obviously, what we don't do in here is we don't pull in costs. We don't pull in some of the other Microsoft licenses, whether they're being used. I think it's worth mentioning at this point, Tiger Lens, which we are in the throes of launching at the moment. So obviously, if you want to talk to us about license management, have a chat with your account manager. Tiger Lens gets into a lot more detail. We've got pricing that we pull in. It looks at SKUs. So, for example, where you've got a license that may be part of a SKU, so it might include 5 things, and you're not using it from there, you're buying it separately, and it does all sorts of clever things, and it will tell you where you can actually turn licenses off. So if you are interested in licensing, or somebody within your organisation deals with that, put them in touch with your account manager and have a chat. We'll be launching that next year. Very good product that can help you. So, but just at a high level, it's included if you're a Teams customer within Prism. Please go and utilise it, I think is the message.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Right. There's one more question that we got submitted that I know is not in Prism yet, but is coming in our next release. So there was a question about managers for call queues, weekly summaries, looking at their call queues on a Monday, covering the previous week. The customer's using widgets, scheduled jobs, formats of CSV, nothing else. Right, so let's give a little glimpse, shall we then, Matt? And this, we will be discussing this in our next Ask the Expert in January anyway, because it will be launched then.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you want to give us a little example, please?
Yeah, so the question here is, do we have a report? At this moment in time, no, but coming in the next release, and as I said, we will preview this in the next Ask the Expert, there is a new report coming that basically will allow you to email your managers on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, however you want it, and this is how it will look. There will be the ability to turn on and show the agents underneath. I haven't done that on this screenshot just because it will take up too much real estate on the screen, but it will give you a good idea that you can see this is the queue. Here, how many calls, how many were answered, what was your average wait, your longest wait, and then in your unanswered stats, you set your SLAs in here. So, how many waited less than 20 seconds, how many were waited longer.
Yeah.
How many?
And you can change that.
You can change that. Yeah. It's a configurable thing that you can do.
So if you've got, say, a 40-second IVR, you're going to want it to be 40 seconds plus, or is it not?
This doesn't include the IVR. Point of being presented to the end user. So what this will be is, how long they waited in that queue before they were answered. So you'll have a set SLA as a company, and you can set that. And it can be per report as well. So if you schedule a report, you can say, right, I know my sales are 30 seconds, support is 20 seconds, and then infrastructure is 60 seconds. And you can configure each one on there.
Yeah.
It then tells you how many calls were abandoned, how many went to voicemail, and then how many overflowed. So for those that don't understand what an overflow is, you can set your queue after a set amount of time to go somewhere else. Now, what that somewhere else is configurable. So that could be that it overflows to another queue. It overflows to a PSDN number. Okay, so here, I can see that the calls came in and they overflowed out. Then 50% of my calls overflowed out, which means I may not have enough staff in there, so I need to go and talk to that manager and understand why this overflowed.
There was a lot of people on holiday that week. It's that simple sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Right. If we go on to the next slide. So, Ask the Experts January 2025. So we are going to be doing primarily a focus on Teams and the insights within Prism. Obviously, we've got a lot of Teams customers. If you're not a Teams customer, but you use Microsoft Teams, it'd be a great session to come along to. Come and see what Prism can actually provide data-wise for you as an organisation. We've got the dates on there. At the end of this call, you'll be sending a survey. Please do give us our feedback. We are going to do 4 Ask the Experts again next year. This one's done. We've agreed what it's going to be. But if you've got any suggestions of what you'd like to see in our Ask the Expert session, sorry, I've said that too many times today, then please do leave it in your feedback. You'll also then receive a link to register for the January one. So get your registration in now. As we've said, even if anything changes in your calendar, your diary, and you can't make it, you'll get the information about it. You'll get a link to go and watch it back. So yeah, get your registrations in and get it in your calendar early.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing you then, guys. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you. And dare I say, as we're at that time of the year, I wish you all a good Christmas. I was going to wait till December, but I feel we're 4 weeks away now. So I wish you all a good Christmas and New Year, and we'll speak to you all on next year's first Ask the Expert.
Thank you, everybody.